So, for those of you who couldn't make it to the talent show on Friday, I saved you a joke. I'm glad to hear some laughs instead of groans from those of you who were here. A minister received a call one day just before the end of the year from the IRS. "Reverend, do you know John Smith?" "Why, yes, I do," replied the minister. "Is John Smith a member of your church?" "Why, yes, he is." "Did John Smith just make a $10,000 donation?" After a brief pause, the minister replied, "Why, yes, he will." Another joke? "Why, yes, I will." I was on a flight experiencing turbulence. People were getting anxious as it continued. Finally, someone called out, "Can somebody please do something religious?" I figured as an ordained minister I could, so I stood up and took collection. We laugh at this because obviously in that moment they wanted prayer or comfort. But perhaps there's a deeper truth in the joke. We know that we are currently living in a turbulent time. We're living in a time of uncertainty, socially, politically, environmentally, politically. Some of us are living in turbulence in our personal lives. This congregation is experiencing some uncertainty of a time of ministerial transition. And it's during times like this that we need one another the most. This church was built on a foundation of families and people who wanted to create a future for others. They wanted a place for people to go, to worship together, to have a community together. In turbulent times, it can take courage for people to ask one another for money. It takes the knowledge and the firm belief that this community matters. And not just because of who we have been, but also because of who we are and who we will be. To take up a collection in the midst of uncertainty is to declare that we have hope for the future, and we will embrace it together. I want to thank Gracia, who's not here today, and Alyssa, who she didn't know I was going to mention her, the chairs of our congregation's 2019 Pledge Committee. They are I swear that was said in a board meeting. Alyssa's like, They are helping, as you all are as well, to ensure the future of this church. Our sermon title today is a bit of a joke as well, a religious play on words. Some of you know about the Sermon on the Mount. In Christian scriptures, the Sermon on the Mount refers to a collection of teachings by Jesus of Nazareth. Large crowds would gather to hear him. Remember our story for all ages? It wasn't uncommon for a crowd to listen to these teachings and stay late into the evening, long past mealtime. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is talking about values. He challenges what people sometimes believe is the most valuable. For instance, he says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And blessed are the poor, for they shall inherit the kingdom of God. And blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." He teaches his people about prioritizing spiritual matters, love for your enemies, prayer, acceptance of others without judgment. Throughout the sermon, Jesus is telling people what he feels is important. He's saying to them that our values matter. Our values are how we allow ourselves to be guided. They help us decide where to commit our resources like time, energy, and money. So as we enter into our pledge and canvas season, I ask you, what do you value? We've talked a lot about that as a community since I arrived. Many of you value the community you found here. We value our history. We value the principles of this faith. Each time we have talked about this so far, we've discussed what we as a congregation value. Now we're going to get just a little more personal. What do you as individuals value? What do you value about this congregation so much that it would drive you to stand up and take collection in the middle of turbulence? What is it that sings to your heart, to your spirit? Is it the worship services, the music? Is it your love of committee work? If you said yes here, the board would like to have a word with you after the service. Is it that you have a place to bring your kids? Is it social activities like the talent show? What speaks most to your values? What makes you keep coming back? Everyone should have at least one index card. If you don't, could you raise your hand? Oh, we got everyone. Awesome. Now I want to invite you to take just a couple of minutes to write down, and if you need a pen, raise your hand. Okay, take just a couple of minutes to write down what came to your mind. Write what you value. And I encourage you to write more than one word. Why does this matter to you? When we're done, we're going to share with one another. And if you're a visitor here, I don't typically do this. And if you are a visitor or really new and not yet familiar with the congregation, please feel free to write about something you value in community and relationships in general, something that matters to you. When we're done with this, when we're done with this whole thing, I'm going to ask that we pass baskets around to collect the cards, because I'd like to hang what you wrote in the social hall downstairs. As you're ready, you can move into the next part. What I'm going to ask you to do is talk to at least 2 other people and tell them what it is you value about being here, what brings you back. You can either talk to people around you or get up and move around, depending on your need for movement and energy level this morning. Exactly. Oops. Thank you. Sounded like some great conversations. We're going to pass the baskets around as I continue with the sermon to collect the cards that you've written, and you'll see them up in the social hall by next week. And as you move through the next week or so into our annual pledge canvas, I encourage you to think more about what you value. Just as in our story about the loaves and the fishes, think about your role in multiplying what we have here today, because that is the true nature of our community. When we commit our financial resources to this place, we take a couple of fishes and a handful of loaves, and we grow them to be enough to provide for many, many more than we ever thought possible. Where we prioritize our money speaks to what we value most. At one point in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And if you prefer more modern teaching, Joe Biden's words might be more to your liking. Don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value. Makes note, they like quotes from Joe Biden. Note that neither of these men is saying that people who have a lot of money are better than those who don't. And they're not saying what our specific budgets should look like. They are simply saying that what we do with what we have, however great or small an amount that we have, is a reflection of what we consider most valuable. So we should take care to think about our values when we make plans for our finances, individually, together, and as a worshiping community. I want to acknowledge that sometimes it's difficult for us to talk about money with one another, and sometimes it's a surprise to hear it from the pulpit. And yet, it's important for your minister to talk to you about money, because it's a part of my job to attend to all matters of our congregational life together. Because who we are together matters to me. This is a church that matters in this community. Before I close, I want to offer you the words of Reverend Kelly Wiseman Asproof Jackson. In the church that doesn't matter, there are no quarrels, no arguments. No one ever says anything they regret at a meeting to discuss the sanctuary's new paint color. There is nothing to inspire such passionate intensity because none of the decisions of the church touch anyone's heart. And no one lives or dies by its choices or even feels for a moment like they might. Everything is as easy as pie. In the church that doesn't matter, no one has to ask for money or talk about it much. There's always enough to go around. There's always enough because no matter how much there is, there's always less to do with it than that. The vision always shrinks to undermatch the means. So canvas season is always a breeze in the church that doesn't matter. No one ever disagrees with the preacher's sermon. The music is always just fine. There's never a fight about the liturgy, not even if they do joys and sorrows, not even if they stop doing joys and sorrows. There's never any controversy because no one ever says anything they really care about. And no one else seems to care. Because of this, the service is always equally inoffensive if the minister is speaking or if a lay leader is speaking. The sounds of children during worship, the recruitment of Sunday school teachers, the compensation of professional religious educators, and the size and condition of the space dedicated to religious education, none of these things are ever talked about or thought about in the church that doesn't matter. Those issues just seem to take care of themselves somehow. No one ever has to clean up in the church that doesn't matter, or figure out the old electrical system or furnace, or consult the building codes or climb a ladder. If no one bothers to make coffee on Sunday, no one complains. And if no one greets the visitors, no one seems to mind. Everything is easier in the church that doesn't matter. The total solutions to all the frustrations of congregational life require no consultants, manuals, or webinars. Simply avoid at all costs meaning and purpose and anything that might lead you to either or both. Whatever you do, do not let yourself care about the people around you or the covenant you share. Yet knowing this, we still decide again and again to ask tough questions, to take real risks, to do the work that needs doing, and to tell the truth. We get out of bed on Sunday morning, even on daylight savings. We answer the email. We make something imperfect but sweet for the bake sale, and we give our time and attention to that meeting every third Thursday. We ask each other how we're doing and mean it. We make phone calls and craft projects for the first grade class. We offer our gifts, both humble and great. And we do these things, sometimes in joy and sometimes not in joy, because they are done in a service of a church that matters to us. May it always be so. My beloved spiritual companions, the Universalist Unitarian Church of East Liberty has been around for generations. It has served countless families and been a part of changing the face of this county. This church matters. And as we enter this time of discernment about our individual and shared resources, may we be aware of how this congregation matters to each of us and how each of us matters to it. Blessed be. Amen.